We got breaking news on the NFL in Tennessee when it concerns with Derrick Henry has a potentially season-ending foot injury. That coming in the win yesterday against Indy. Had some time in this one where he had 28 carries and 68 yards in that one. You can see right there, walking it off. But when you talk about Derrick Henry, of course, and the load he's carried this year, of the 230 carries from the backfield, he's responsible for 219. By the way, leads the league with 937 yards, set for MRI later today to find out if this is a long-term deal for the Rush King. As you can see there, the breakdown for the first 6 weeks, over a $130 there, but the last 2 weeks, 7 and 8, a little under what he's used to do. As you can see there, no rushing touchdowns in weeks 7 and 8 for Derrick Henry. All right, let's get that fantasy angle here. Our Jamie Eisenberg joining us from home, and also Dave Richard here in studio. Dave, I'll start with you. The reaction to this news here, the Rush King likely out for some time. We don't know the extent, though.
I can't say what I said when I heard the news because I'll get kicked out of here. No, I can't. There are a lot of bad words that were spoken, but it's really a nightmare situation for fantasy managers. We're taking the best player in fantasy football and taking him out of the game, and that's what's happening to the Titans. They're going to need to replace him. There's no replacing Derrick Henry. They're probably going to mix and match multiple running backs to do so. Jeremy Nichols would be the first guy up for them. We've seen him used in passing situations. He's actually sported, this is funny, a better yards per carry number and a better yards after contact per carry than Derrick Henry. But that doesn't mean he's better. He's not. And he's going to end up splitting work with somebody else there, whether it's somebody that they trade for at the deadline or somebody else, Dontrell Hilliard maybe. It's a nightmare. Fantasy managers shouldn't want to go after Jeremy McNichols as the option. The time is now to make a trade for a running back that's like 40% of Derrick Henry. It's totally ugly, and it's going to ruin a lot of fantasy teams.
Yeah, the nice thing is that we're going to see if they get aggressive at the trade deadline. You know, with the fact that that's tomorrow, we'll see what the Titans are going to try and do. Is they going to get somebody off somebody's depth chart? For me, I'd be looking at a guy like maybe like a Benny Snell. You see Tevin Coleman's name floated out there, maybe one of the San Francisco backups. Ronald Jones, if they can maybe pry him off the Bucs backfield, off their depth chart. Maybe Tyson Williams, if the Ravens really don't like him, go get him, see what they can, make that happen. But if it is Jeremy McNichols and we get through the trade deadline, you're going to see a lot of fab spent on him, because if he's going to have that opportunity, he is the next man up. We'll see if Dontrell Hilliard gets a chance to maybe get some work. They're going to bring in somebody. I hope it's not somebody old and decrepit like Adrian Peterson. I'd rather see one of the young guys get a shot. So McNichols is going to be the most popular player off waivers as of now. But if we get to the trade deadline and somebody else is added, that player is going to be the most added player in fantasy for week number 9.
Yeah, McNichols, of course, not much of a carry this year, just 7 for 38. You see the rush yards per attempt, just under 5. Fantasy points, just 6.4. So maybe a little uptick depending on what they do for the trade deadline there. Dave?
I'm just saying I don't think he can keep up this yards per game receiving at 25.4. Otherwise, he'd be a pretty amazing player for fantasy. But that is where he's made a decent impact for Tennessee. He had been working as a passing downs guy, and that's what they've done to try and take Derrick Henry off the field a little bit. I imagine that they'll keep McNichols in that role at a bare minimum.
You mentioned the passing there. Are we looking at Ryan Tannehill now as, this is the franchise quarterback in Tennessee? Can he throw the ball 40 or 50 times? If you have him as your starting quarterback, are you happy with him for the next couple of weeks?
I think you absolutely have to consider him now as a possible guy that the Tennessee offense is going to run through. It makes perfect sense. Can he be great for fantasy week in and week out? I don't think anybody's going to feel good starting Ryan Tannehill, especially since it's just A.J. Brown and then maybe, the corpse of Julio Jones that's playing alongside him. They don't really have another option in the passing game to go with them. He would be, at best, a high-end streamer for me moving forward, even without Derrick Henry. Part of the allure for him is that play-action passing that he does, because Henry is such a threat. Defense is key in on Henry. If Henry's not there, it makes it a lot easier to play against the pass in Tennessee.
Yeah, I think for Tannehill, maybe he uses his legs a little bit more now. We haven't really seen that from him to the extent that he typically does. But he's in trouble. This is an offensive line that struggled. This is a receiving core that's down to one guy. And so, I think Dave said it best. He's a high-end number 2 guy at best. The volume will certainly be up, and we'll have to see what they do. This is just an incomplete right now. So if they add somebody that's going to help them, then certainly Tannehill will still have some opportunities. His volume is going to have to go up because they're not going to be able to rely on whoever the running back is to the same extent. And A.J. Brown is going to be fed targets. So hopefully Julio Jones comes back and they turn into a little bit more of a passing team. It's on Todd Downing now, the new offensive coordinator. How is he going to adjust to this? Because what their offense has been. It didn't change much going from Arthur Smith to Todd Downing. Now it's up to Downing to sort of change the approach of what this team is, the outlook of what this team is. They're still very much in the driver's seat of a bad division in the AFC South. Imagine if the Colts had won that game yesterday. They would be feeling pretty good about themselves right now, looking at a head-to-head win, 2 head-to-head wins against that team, or excuse me, head-to-head win against that team, splitting 1-1, and then coming out of this without Derrick Henry. Colts are in bad shape still, but the Titans are in bad shape as well now that they don't have Derrick Henry on their roster.
Jamie, of course, a good thing here is the trade deadline, of course, is tomorrow at 4 p.m., so that's maybe the silver lining. They have a chance to add a piece there, maybe a Marlon Mack. I highly doubt Tony Pollard is leaving Dallas there.
No chance.
But any options out there for them to add somebody that can do maybe 50 to 40%, like Dave said, what Henry has done?
Yeah, it's not going to be Tony Pollard. It's definitely not going to be Marlon Mack. The Colts are not trading within their division. You know, you're looking at a team that's got probably a 3rd or 4th running back. To me, I'd go look at Benny Snell. You know, I know he's not great, but he's the type of physical running back that could fit this offense. Steelers are definitely not using him anytime soon. So that's be the first place I'd go look because you could probably get him cheap. You know, the guys that have been mentioned, you know, the Texans guys, I don't know if David Johnson or Philip Lindsay comes in and makes a difference to the same extent, obviously, of what Derrick Henry is. But that's probably a team that they'll call and see if they're willing to, you know, part with one of the 2 guys after getting rid of Mark Ingram. I think you could look at the Ravens if they're going to move on from Tyson Williams. Who knows if the Titans offer the right compensation, maybe Tyson Williams can end up finding his way to Tennessee. Ronald Jones, I doubt, but you know, you heard some trade rumors potentially if the Bucks wanted to move on from him. So they're going to make some calls, but my guess is they'll, you know, bring in a street free agent and see what they can find. As our buddy Pete Prisco will say, running backs grow on trees. We're going to find out that really soon if the Titans can really make that happen.
And now here's the bad news. If all those names that Jamie mentioned as possible replacements for Derrick Henry make you sick as a fantasy manager, here's the list of running backs that you might be able to trade for at a discounted price to replace Derrick Henry. And we're talking about maybe giving up a pretty decent wide receiver to go get a James Conner, Melvin Gordon, J.D. McKissick in PPR leagues. Antonio Gibson's value right now is in the tank, so maybe you can get him at a discount. Myles Gaskin. I mean, these are not names, when you compare them to Derrick Henry, Brandon, you look at him and you laugh at him. But you can't anymore because they're going to get you more fantasy points than Derrick Henry in the next couple of weeks at the very minimum.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to kind of replace the 937 that he has already on the season. 353 more than the next guy. And we're talking about the Rush King there. As always, we'll see how that pans out. Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard, appreciate your time. Catch him on FFT. The guy is always breaking it down with this breaking news here with Derrick Henry there as well. Let's take a look at the Titans schedule. Of course, we don't know the timetable or time frame yet. The MRI set for today for Derrick Henry, but boy, you look at it there. You get the Rams, of course, that's Sunday night. Then you get the Saints, Texans, Patriots, a bye week. Also, we have to see what happens before tomorrow at 4 p.m., the trade deadline. What happens for the Titans here. Keep it here at CBS Sports HQ with all the breaking news, of course, on this, the latest with Henry.